that's really tough, and kind of working through it with a team, it meets that need, and then it also meets the social needs, and for children to feel part of something and feel engaged and proud of what they do. I'll share a little story with you. One mom I was speaking to was telling me that her son went to the Nationals and said, "Oh my goodness, you must be so proud." This is a middle school child. And she said, "Yes, I am so proud. He really needed it for the socialization." So here's a mom. Yeah, isn't that neat? I mean, so here's a mom, and I'm thinking, you know, the child is going to be, I don't know, a brain surgeon. He's just a genius, and he's doing incredible things. And she said he needed a social experience. So that is a really important lesson for us, and an important message to remember, because clubs and activities and engagement can offer all kinds of things to so many different people. We have lots of discussions between school committee and superintendent about expanding opportunities not only for clubs and activities, but also intramurals and ways that we can have kids be engaged and be challenged, because we think that if they're part of their school community and we build a sense of unity that way, it will be a better experience for young people. So we're very much interested in that. Did you say also PBL is something that you are hoping for?
So I think the community came up with recommendations on 4 aspects. So the one that I talked about was the after school.
Oh, you were doing that part. Okay, all right.
So I don't know where this came up, this thought that they would be done away with. I have heard no talk with the school district that any of that would be eliminated.
Right.
So
I can talk about that.
Yeah, so
what?
I can talk about why we got the first 2 recommendations afterwards.
Okay, so you know, I think it's safe to say that those activities are good, encouraged. But as we were talking, it did remind me of one thing. And one thing that happens with after-school clubs, especially things like the ones you're talking about that often take some parent involvement or parent volunteers, those things sometimes come and go depending on whether there are people willing to put the time in to support them. So I have seen, you know, an elementary math team springs up because parents interested in it, and then when that parent goes through, it dies. And, you know, maybe the same thing happens in middle school. Well, you know, so effort goes into building something up, but you need the sustainability. So as you were speaking, it made me think about whether we should think about how to build in better sustainability. So those opportunities for kids can continue to be there instead of rise and fall and disappear just because there aren't volunteers to make that.
I do think to leverage more of the community expertise in that process would be something that's an opportunity for us. So getting people who are interested, involved, and connecting them with children could be exciting.
right. So I do think this recommendation would be very controversial, because I think we're all for it. I think the reason it came up is I think during one of the community workshops, I think the parent brought up the point that maybe math team is not well participated, maybe we shouldn't really support it. I think that caused some confusion in the community. I think this is a good opportunity to clarify that. Is that just a rumor?
So I do want to say something about that, because when things come up at the table, there are things that I found objectionable on those sheets that were raised by the community, and that's okay. People have a right to say their point of view. My advice to all table leaders is everything goes. We're not editing here. Everybody's ideas, because it's a brainstorm and because we're trying to generate new and exciting opportunities, everybody's idea counts. But people should not assume that just because it was written on a table and maybe somebody was really vocal and maybe somebody even seemed like they were powerful and extra knowledgeable about the school system, that doesn't mean that's the thing that is going to reside in a strategic plan. Could be, but it's not necessarily the case. So I do feel like we are on the same page in terms of the after-school opportunities, and I would love to see more of them.
So if you don't mind me just add on a little bit, professional Hackett. Yes, glad to see here that existing teams and clubs are here to stay for long run, and then super access on the existing foundation. So I thank you so much, Ellie, for raising that point.
Yeah, I think it's something to fold in as we think about more opportunities to, as Dr. Hackett says, engage some of the expertise in the community so that those don't just rise and fall because of individuals.
Yeah, so I actually, like to comment a little bit on the science team and other platform. Okay, so, so people might know that my daughter Catherine, she actually was the, captain of LHS science team for a number of years, and they eventually won a national champion. That's something she worked so hard for. She was very happy for, and the entire team, right? But if you're gonna, and then I think both Dr. Hackett and everybody talked about the platform for all the right reasons, getting kids to this. Everything you said, I agree. But I think I do want to caution in the following sense. When Catherine was talking about her science team experience, many of you were in the audience, she actually cautions that if you relate that to getting into a college, first of all, it's the wrong reason to do that, to do the science team. Second, it's actually even help, and it can actually even hurt your chance of getting into elite college. So there are, we can talk about why that could be the case, but if you were in one of the seminars she presented, she actually outlined why that. But that didn't, of course, prevent her from doing it. She loved it, and she's going to do it no matter whether it has anything to do with college or not. I couldn't stop her; nobody could. So that's the one note, footnote I want to add to this most wonderful platform. But I think we need to be mindful about what that platform is. Thank you.
So next.
So my second recommendation, which first I want to say to Dr. Hackett that volunteer very important, and I volunteer as a math coach for some elementary school for several years, and 2 years in Diamond when they did not have the math coach. So and also our team did very good, second in the state. Yeah. So and also I will continue volunteer whenever you need. All right. So that's my promise. Okay.
So
Yeah.
John,
Yeah.
you couldn't beat Clark, so we're not forgiving you.
Yeah, sure, yeah. Now, of course, for the middle school math team, there's some allowance for teachers, about $3,000 each year for each school. So therefore, whenever a teacher want to do that, we should not take up a teacher job. So nevertheless, what I did is that I continued to have my son and his friend to help the team, so that they will volunteer continuously, so that the team keep consistent for 4 years. Another reason, it's like in terms of why we had some recommendation is that, of course, the math team probably just somebody mentioned, and another thing is the AP classes. It's more than one person mentioned, and also, particularly, in the planning slides, there is one entry called examination of learning demographics in less than high school math courses. And we don't know exactly what that means, but it's brings some parents a little bit nervous here, right? First of all, is that first thing is that, of course, as Helen mentioned, our college admission rate is going down a little bit. And second of all is that for the college admission, right, there is a lot of them has SAT subjects requirements, so which need AP, right? So for the time being, of course, I only know the math class very well. I only talk about those, right? So for middle school, there is from 7th grader saying that you have those honor class starting, and 8th grader there's something better, like in Clark. Miss Frost's class used to be really popular. They teach you very hard stuff, and kids love it. And for high school, you have the Math 1, Math 2, Math 3, Math 4. And each one, kids can be recommended from 8th grade according to their level by their math teacher, which works as really good. And also then you have the AP class. And therefore, another thing is that the lesson use unweighted GPA system, so that no matter which level of class you take, as long as you keep good score, your GPA still looks good. So I think that works really well. For example, if somebody is really busy, or they do not have a lot of math training or training in the beginning, then they can go to Math 2 or even Math 1. Then, they can still get an A, right? But for some kids who really learn a lot, they can even go to Math 4. And then for those kids, they go to AP, then you can go to the Harvard extension classes. And of course, the parents pay some of the scholar tuition. And this year, there are about 37 kids who went to Harvard Math Extension. And that's not only give them an opportunity, but also I think it saves some lesson in school resources because they're paying that, they're paying that. Right? So that's another cost cutting, or maybe very small one. Right? But regardless, I think it's better to provide different level of classes and do not, I think when we were afraid that, to get a level in this thing, but by cutting the high level classes, or maybe stack different level people go to the AP classes, then the education quality will be hard for teachers. So that's our recommendation is to keep the current rigorous curriculum so that all students can go from one level to another. And so that's and also of course I think that this is probably more important for the STEM field because the country needs a lot of people in those fields. So and of course as public school, we should also try to get the kids ready. Thank you.
Right, so I heard two things, I think. I heard something about worry about advanced placement and something related to a worry about leveling. Is that right, in math? Okay. So the leveling discussion that's happening is coming up through a curriculum review process. The curriculum review process is really important in our system. It had not happened in a very long time, longer than should have gone on. I think the number was something like 10 years since the last math curriculum revision. And the curriculum revision process is a way to infuse new learnings, understandings, research into what happens in the classroom. Education is notorious for having a lag between what's happening in the scientific and research fields and then bringing it into the classroom. And that's one of the ways that we bypass that process. But if it doesn't happen for a decade or more, it's really hard to kind of help that along. So the good news is that we're in the process of many curriculum revisions. We had a really fantastic presentation by some exceptional leaders and educators in the system on a number of curriculum revisions, including math, and that just happened on Tuesday night. And what the math department is exploring is really smart, and it's not related to wiping out all levels, because that's what people have heard, that's what people believe may occur, and that's what the worry is. What they are examining, and I'll give a nod to Francesca and invite her into the conversation in a bit, but what they're examining is that they have many, many levels. And when you have many, many levels in one academic subject, what happens? You separate more. And how do you separate more? Well, because of the way that structures and systems have worked for hundreds and hundreds of years in the United States and elsewhere, some of that separation that is troubling to us is that our students of color, particularly African American, tend to be in the lowest leveling that exists. So when we go into classes and we see children who we know are every bit as bright and capable as other children, always kind of stuck in the same sort of level, that makes us wonder, do we have systems and structures that are perpetuating kind of stereotypes that should not exist? And that's something that we have to be honest about, have to examine. Part of what Kevin Kelly, who's the math department head, talked about was that we had a very proud moment in Lexington a number of years ago, 2012 I think may have been the year when we talked about achievement gap, and our students do nationally and in the state do fare very well in terms of having a gap that's smaller than in other places, but that gap has existed for 50 years in this country, meaning that students, particularly African American and Hispanic, they have a gap between Asian and Caucasian students in terms of academic outcomes, and we find that that's unacceptable because we also believe and are beginning to examine that something as simple as, oh, hey, why don't you try this class could encourage a child to lift their aspirations and do better. So often when you brought up middle school, and that's in math and how that progression goes along, if you are tapped in middle school for those top level math classes, you are on a trajectory to get to the top level math class throughout your high school career. Very often, even in places that are very savvy and people know the systems, people are unaware that what happens to you in 6th grade impacts your whole career potentially and your whole trajectory. So what they're talking about in math is very simply